Welcome back to episode 107 of the Real Estate Huddle, where today we're going to talk about what buyers don't realize about inspections and appraisals and what the differences are. Some people kind of think they're the same thing. So we're going to talk about this. They're actually, if you're a buyer, these things are actually out to protect you, right? Inspections and appraisals in different ways. And so we'll break it down because I don't know how many times like I've heard people make mistakes and say appraisal when they mean inspection and say inspection when they mean appraisal. And some people are literally like, yeah, what's the difference, right? They're listening. And others, like obviously this may be more of a review, but you may learn some little ins and outs of, how to handle these things if something comes up. And so we'll talk through those things. But definition of an appraisal, anybody got that? So people can understand what this actually means?
I wrote one out. Should I read it?
Yeah.
An appraisal is an unbiased estimate of a home's value ordered by the lender to make sure that they're not lending more than the home is worth.
Keyword there, unbiased.
Yeah.
And ordered by the lender.
And how is that unbiased?
It's somebody who's not party to the transaction, right? So it's not a buyer, not the seller, it's not the lender, it's a pool of people. The lender will typically put out like, I need an appraisal, and people will bid and respond to it, and then that's who goes and does it. So somebody who's trained, it's got certified and has a license to go do it, but they're essentially coming in to say, okay, I believe that this home is worth X amount of dollars, and therefore if you lend X amount of dollars on the value of this home, you're not making a poor choice or a bad risk.
And they're not influenced by jelly donuts.
No?
Can't do that. Or 20s.
I feel like you're doing something you shouldn't.
Krispy
But
Kremes?
Benjamins?
Benjamins? Yeah.
You slip them 100? No, I'm just kidding. Can't do that.
Change your mind?
That's like, can't do that.
To not influence your appraiser.
Yeah.
That is definitely a no.
You can befriend them, but you cannot influence them.
Yeah.
So, like, what are we talking about cost-wise? Like, appraisal, if I'm a buyer and I need to know, like, what are all my costs involved with appraisal and inspection, what am I looking at?
So inspections are usually those things that are out of pocket for you.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to appraisal, I've seen it anywhere from 6 to I've seen them up in the 900s even, just depending on the market.
Yeah,
that
so
we're in.
600 to 1,000.
Yeah, that's what I budget for.
It depends on if they need to rush it, like if there's a real short deadline or if you've got a lot of runway.
And how big the house is,
Yep.
too.
But your point, Spencer, is that it's rolled into the transaction usually and covered at closing, whereas inspection is out of pocket.
The inspection is technically out of pocket. The lender, because it's ordered by the lender, will roll that into your closing costs, which you'll bring a check for at closing, or however that works out. And but the inspection, you actually pay the inspector yourself.
Okay. So if I'm a buyer, inspection and appraisal are my friends. The appraisal protects my value. Inspection protects my condition, right, of the property? Okay, cool.
So an inspection is voluntary. You don't have to do an inspection. I highly recommend all buyers go through and have an inspection done, but there's different levels, right? You can have different tiers of inspection, but that is to check the mechanical, the electrical, all the basic structure of the home. Now, the appraisal is just the overall general home value relative to the rest of the market in the area. So, and good agents, before you even write an offer, will already have assessed that. So that's one thing we do is look through comps and make sure we're not
your appraiser's
overpaying.
not going to go in and start looking at the foundation walls. Usually they're not going to look at all these like possible problems with the house. They're just there to look at updates that you've made. They're essentially there to compare it to all the other homes that have sold in that radius or however close of an area to give you that best possible value.
Yep. And they have like science for this, right?
Yep.
Like as far as the adjustments go, like this much more in square footage may mean this adjustment per square foot. Another bedroom may mean this, right? And so we've gotten familiar with a lot of those because I've walked through a lot of homes with appraisers, meeting them as the listing agent on site to let them into a house so that they can do the appraisal. And I've learned a lot just from following appraisers around and understanding how they make adjustments. And that's helped me evaluate properties and comp out properties so that we nail it on our listing prices, because that's pretty important.
So when I was new to the biz, I did a CE class, continuing ed class with a great appraiser. Eye-opening, very scientific. And I think when we do our own, you speak like you've spent a lot of time with appraisers, meaning the accounting for this size or smaller.
Yep.
So it's very scientific, and that's comforting.
Yep.
It's math usually.
Yeah. And they take a cost approach and then a market approach, right? So the cost approach is like, what is the value of the land? What's the value of this home that's built, right? And what adjustments am I making to get to that value? Where the market approach is more based on comparable homes. And so they usually just need 3 really good comps. That's what they need, but they'll use about 5 to 6. And they've got to convince an underwriter, right, that's lending on this home that this home is actually worth the value of the home. And if they can't do that, if they can't feasibly come up with that number and the adjustments are showing that this home should not be worth this much, then they'll come in low on value. And what happens when that happens in a real estate transaction? I think a lot of us have been through that.
That's a great calibration session for the seller to understand that their home is not worth that much, and an independent person is surveying that. And typically that means another negotiation.
Yeah.
Well, or it means you walk. The buyer
Yeah.
can walk if they can't cover that.
Because you
You
can't,
can negotiate, and that often happens.
yeah, in a very competitive market, there's a lot of people
Yeah.
waiving appraisals or, not even giving themselves the opportunity to have a negotiation or discussion if the appraisal comes in low. Or they're doing appraisal gaps that says, hey, I'll give $100,000 because I know that this house may not appraise for the price I'm paying for it. So that's typically when you see the market running up, but in a market like we're in now in Denver, the appraisal is a strong number. So,
Yep.
So that's the third option is the buyer has to make up the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've seen people kind of split the difference there, right, and come down a little bit. So let's say the home appraises for $650,000, but the contract price is $700,000, so they're $50,000 low, right? In some cases, because the lender's not willing to lend on more than $650,000 of whatever the loan to value is, right? So if it's a 90% loan to value, right, if you're putting 10% down, they're only gonna, do up to 90% of $650 now, not $700, which was the contract price. So therefore, you've got a discrepancy of $50,000 that needs to be made up, and that can either be made up by price going down, buyers bringing more cash, or a combination of both. Or the deal terminates, like you said, and walks away. So most contracts are contingent upon the home appraising for the purchase price.
So talk a bit about you're not waiving the appraisal. You're waiving your right to negotiate based
To
on
object.
a gap.
to object to an appraisal. So, and typically in Colorado, you have like 7 different options to back out. Inspection is probably the biggest one. Lending, appraisal, those are kind of the key ones that you typically see. So, but on the flip side, the appraisal could benefit you. So what happens when your house appraises for more than you're under contract for?
Got equity in the bank.
That's equity in the bank. So I had one that was a really weird deal where we got the contract on, but we didn't close for like several months later. And in that time, another one of the units in the same area had sold, and it was like $27,000 more. And oh, by the way, now your 3% down payment is more like a 7% down payment, and you just made that kind of money by being patient. And I've had some others that have appraised where just buying the home gives you a 9 or 10% down payment, which was
Well, but we talked about 2 years ago, the waiving that gap was
common.
almost every transaction because it was competitive and you couldn't afford to lose. Now, balanced market, I think we're doing an appraisal on almost every home.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's compare that with first logistically, like during an appraisal, nobody can be there except for the homeowner, the listing agent to give them access, and the appraiser. That's it. So buyers can't be there. Buyer agent cannot be there to influence the appraiser, right? So that's a really important thing for people to know. It may not realize, but the listing agent's able to be there just to grant access and can show them some of the comparables or some of the comps that he used to price the home, he or she. And so appraisers are not exactly overachievers. So they don't really try to like come in high a lot. So when it does come in high, like you mentioned, Brock, like that's uncommon. That means it's like blatantly like you got a good deal. Right. So
Your agent worked really hard for your price.
I mean, almost every time it comes in right at the contract price. I would say 95% of the time.
Or $2,500 under the contract price just because they know.
Right.
We've had that too.
Because again, they have to convince an underwriter, right? And they don't want to go through brain damage of, having to work too hard. And so that's why that's the case.
Here's the other reason why the appraisals are an important step in the process. There were times back in 2008 and around there where people were lending way more than what the home was actually worth. So essentially the bank was underwater whoever purchased the property was underwater to begin with. So the lender was never able to recoup their cost. If they lent $1 million in a house that was only worth $500,000, they were going to be out that $500,000. So they just didn't want to have to deal with that, plus the cost and the fees of going back and relisting the property. So it's a protection for the lender.
Yeah, definitely. So that usually happens like 2 to 3 weeks into the contract process. The inspection happens during the first like 7 days typically. And so when buyers hire an inspector, they can actually choose who they hire. It's not just like the lender that orders the appraiser. The buyers can choose based on who they want to hire, who has good reviews. I think that there are some people that are like in the construction world that are like, I'm just going to have my general contractor do it, or I'm going to do it myself, or I'll have my uncle do it. He knows what he's doing. He knows his way around a house, you know? And so we've seen sometimes that'll work out okay, depending on who your uncle is.
Yeah.
Other times it's a disaster and they miss all kinds of things because they're not trained to look through a house like an inspector is. So I would just hire a professional inspector is our recommendation always.
But if you have a contractor friend, have them come to the inspection and see if there's a second opinion or something they may have missed. But a professional that is licensed, it's going to go around and do the inspection, is going to give you your best bang for the
As
buck.
buyer's agents, we're pretty good. We're not that good, but we're pretty good to have around. I tend to be there for my inspections, at least for the first 20 minutes and the last half hour to get the regroup. Anyway, but you're saying you usually know before you're under contract the age of the, furnace, status of the AC, how old are those windows.
Yep.
And buyers are encouraged to be there during the inspection as much as they can be to understand the house a little better.
Yep.
The other thing that people don't realize is that the inspection, so we always just hire, a generic inspector, and there's a couple inspections that you can do with that inspection. Typically, they'll do just a general home inspection that includes like your roof, your mechanicals, structure, all that kind of stuff. And then typically they'll have add-ons like sewer scope, which we always recommend you do. And then in Colorado, especially radon test to see where those radon levels come. But that does not mean that you are strictly bound to just those inspections. If you want to inspect for asbestos, you can do that. If you want to inspect for lead in your paint, you can do that. In that inspection period and per the actual contract to buy and sell real estate, currently, it states that you are able to perform whatever inspection is necessary for you to move forward on that home. So don't think that it's just limited to this. Now, keep in mind, and make sure you consult with your realtor. They'll tell you kind of what's best, because sometimes it doesn't make sense to test for asbestos because they know there's not going to be any asbestos in there based off of the year of the home, or same with lead paint, or whatever it is. So if you want to have another contractor there, like you have a contractor buddy, that is totally fine to bring your contractor and be like, hey, what's it going to cost to get these wood floors done? Or whatever, that way you can make an informed decision about how much money you have to put into the home or what you're actually getting into, and whether or not you want to move forward on that house. So you're not just subject to that generalized inspector. Keep that in mind. Like, you have a wide array of inspections that you could do. It's going to cost you a lot of money to do it. But
Yeah, I've seen homes that I knew had previous flood damage, and they remodeled and did whatever. But as a known issue with a home from the seller's property disclosure, we went through and like, okay, we got flood damage and we've seen some other things. So mold testing.
oh yeah, big ones.
They did a great one. This is the coolest technology that I've seen, is they used a FLIR, an infrared camera, and went around and ran all of the water, the hot and the cold, and went and traced all the pipes. And we found 2 spots where there were nail holes where the trim was put through the copper pipe.
Yikes.
And we found that at inspection, and it was one of those things that you go, okay, and we normally would never have found that because it was a small leak, but it was enough because we had that infrared and you could see the drips coming off of it. So very cool.
Well, it's interesting because I had an experience. And there's in Colorado, there's certain areas where structurally you may not be as sound as some other areas just based off of the soils and what's in there. And so I've had maybe 2 or 3 clients where we knew the neighborhood we were in and what it was kind of known for. and we brought in a structural engineer to check it out. And on one of those, the structural engineer's like, I don't know about this one. I don't know if I can sign off as this one being like,
That was the lesson I learned.
yeah.
I don't know,
But that's like, that just saved that client hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Yep. Big
Potentially. Because like, I mean, when you're talking about foundational repairs, that is not a cheap thing at all.
Nope.
So, and it's not something that you just want to deal with at all. I mean, you typically with that kind of stuff, you're gonna have like movement in the floor. Your door jambs are gonna be crooked. Your doors aren't gonna close at all. You've just got, I mean, you could put a marble in your house and it's gonna go to one side of the house. It's just
Yeah,
Not
windows
something
don't
I'll deal with.
open.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, a home that is in that one of those areas that has already had those repairs done, the cool technology is knowing which company did the structural repairs. They'd come in and do like a LiDAR scan of the home.
Yep.
And that same company can come back and do another scan and say, okay, it's moved this much, or this is what's happened over the course of the last 5 years or 2 years or 10 years, whatever it is. So technology is really getting there where you can have some confidence that the repair was done properly. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've seen structural repairs come back at, $5,000, we'll just shore this up and we'll be good. And then the next person's like, $180,000, we got to excavate all of this.
you got to put helical pillars under all of your foundation.
So they can
Multiple bids.
So, and those are things that even through a normal inspection, you may get like a red flag, like, hey, there's a problem. Then that's when you open up that window to bring in a structural engineer to go do extra.
Yeah,
So,
and I know it sounds like a lot, like all this inspection stuff is like, well, that's kind of scary. But we tell you this because as realtors, our responsibility is like we have a fiduciary responsibility to you guys, obviously, and then on top of all that, it's more of like we're creating a relationship to hopefully where you can trust us, and we want you to be comfortable in your home. That's our ultimate goal, is for you to find success in this transaction, and that success usually comes in the form of like, I feel comfortable moving in here.
Yeah.
And if it takes a couple inspections to get that done to make you feel good, we will get those inspections lined up for you, and we'll get all those reports, and we'll go through the data with you. Like, we will hold your hand every part of the way here. But yeah, I just thought that was important to mention because a lot of people are like, oh, do you have an inspector? Yeah, we do. Yep, he'll do all this and this and this. And then sometimes they don't even realize, like, well, should we bring another inspection? And
but we get, so
Important to have.
this is the way I think about it. Step back a picture. Like, first thing when we're buying a home is, you can see a lot of homes, you're gonna fall in love with homes. We're gonna find one, we're gonna negotiate the price of the home, right? That is the market talk in, it's a negotiation, and you get under contract. And that's a big, important part of it. The next major one we get is based upon the inspection.
yep.
Where now we get a lot of information that we wouldn't otherwise have, and it becomes a secondary negotiation. Now the seller says, but wait, I gave you, separate the two. Like, the market says what you're worth. Now we're looking at things, and we haven't talked about it so much, safety issues, like radon, safety problem.
yep.
Loose banisters, safety problem. So even in the inspection itself, the way we will put it to work is that we're gonna have a section for the safety issues, which are kind of non-negotiable, is how we want it to feel. And then a lot of other stuff that we're gonna gather feedback that to get this house in working order, we need to do X.
Yeah.
Anyway, but now we're working from real, new, timely data from an expert.
Yeah.
And that empowers us to do another round of negotiation, which sometimes is nothing. Sometimes you buy a beautiful home.
Yeah.
Usually, we've got to dig in and get something more out of the seller.
Yep.
Yep.
Definitely.
And the nice thing is the inspectors we've worked with come with a significant documentation with that. We also, it's very logical in how it's put together, but also the requests, right? We try and simplify that process to get you the most value. I remember the first transaction I ever did, the house was listed with air conditioning or central air, but it didn't actually have an air conditioning unit. The furnace was really old and not working. And then the electrical panel would not accept, didn't have a spot for another breaker to put the air conditioner in. So as we did that, it turns out that the listing agent was actually the owner of the home. So like there was no plausible deniability here. So, and it ended up working out where we got an electrical panel and a new furnace and air conditioner, central air, all in one package for, $200,000 townhome. And
Yeah.
I set the bar pretty high for the first one, so it worked out pretty well. But
You said a couple of things important there. Like, we talked about the seller's property disclosure. That is them sharing with us things that they know about the home. The flip
yeah.
side of that is we almost always provide this inspection report to the sellers along with what we're requiring. It's a very transparent, it just can get emotional and difficult because a lot of dollars in play, but
And
it's very transparent.
emotionally for a buyer, that is by far the lowest point in the transaction, because there's nothing worse than the wow of seeing the house for the typically 1 hour showing window and like, yeah, okay, we're under contract. Oh, great. And then you go in there and you get 80 to 100 page report that says, here's all the things that are wrong with your house. And then you're like, oh boy. So it is an emotional low point. So just be aware of that going in.
That's a good way to say it.
Well, yeah, with that, on top of all that, you have to understand when you get your inspection back, right, you're going to see this, 70 to sometimes 150 page report with all this stuff on it. And you're like, I want it all fixed.
Or I'm scared, I'm running away.
Yeah. So let's put that to bed. You're not going to get it all fixed. Mm-hmm. There are things with houses that are just normal wear and tear, right? That just come with the age of the home, or even brand new homes, you guys. Like if you get an inspection on a brand new home, there will always something's always going to come
I've
up.
actually had some brand new homes that have a worse inspection report
Yes.
than a 20-year-old.
Yes, and I could name those builders right now.
Yes.
I won't, but
start
I know
with-
exactly who you're talking about. But here's the thing is you have to kind of separate the I want it all done from the what's the most important things that we need to look at here. Mm-hmm. Like the safety issues, the big ticket items like your roof and your furnace and your AC and plumbing issues and radon, whatever it is. But when you've got a chipped outlet cover, really, are we gonna nickel and dime that one? Probably not. And so making sure you understand the expectation going into it after your inspection and what we're gonna submit as our objections is really helpful. So not only can you regulate yourself emotionally when this report comes out, but also so we can have a successful alley or avenue in which we can get you some more money or get you things fixed that really do matter.
So who got to deal with the 26-page inspection objection? I think there was someone on our team that had to deal.
I've had
26
I've had 26 items.
Items?
I've
Okay.
had, maybe it may not have been 26, but we've had laundry lists before.
So here's the general process. Buyer performs the inspection. Buyer and buyer's agent put together an inspection objection. This is a wish list of things that we want the seller to take care of. We submit that over. The seller and seller's agent will go through and digest that. Typically, if you say, hey, the furnace didn't turn on when we were there, they're going to bring someone out to go look at that. Different things like that. So part of this process is the seller and seller's agent will go through and, okay, yeah, that's reasonable. No, hey, we didn't even know that was a problem. Then they will come back with an inspection resolution. And that is what the seller is offering to do. And then at that point in time, a buyer says yay or nay to it, or we can further the negotiations depending upon what time that comes back at. So that's kind of the general process. So you put your wish list together and then they do, this is what I'll do. And then from there, it's really going through it. And in the meantime, the agents are talking back and forth over and over again to try and if it's really a long list of items, it's like, hey, these are really important. So we're trying to put our best foot forward to go to bat for you.
And that's a key point in the transaction, because if that's not signed, the inspection resolution doc is not signed by the midnight of the deadline, then the deal terminates and earnest money goes back to the buyer. So it's important for that to come together if you want the contract to move forward, and those deadlines are very important with that. So usually 10 days, 12 days after the contract is signed is when that happens. And those negotiations can result in either work being done or credits being performed, as far as...
It's a good way to say it, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's financial, meaning you can get it. Sometimes, I've done this a few times where I don't have that money. We'll get it done,
Mm-hmm.
so you get a proposal from the vendor, from the contractor. Check is cut by the sellers at closing to that contractor. The work's not done yet, but it only has a single payment.
Yep.
Sometimes that's more comfortable to the seller than writing a check that you may just put in the bank.
So one thing that is kind of misunderstood, all properties in Colorado are sold as is. Some people will list it as is, and I think that's their putting their foot in the door to saying, hey, we're not inspection items we're not going to deal with, right? So that's kind of you can kind of flip the script a little bit, but all properties are that, and then inspection is its own separate negotiation. So that's just
That's
kind
what
of
I was trying to say earlier. You
Yep.
got to separate it. The market determines price. Like here's a real life example, right? We've talked in the last 20 podcasts. The market is favorable to the buyers, right? And that reflects itself in a lot of ways. So here's a home that's been on the market for 90 days, right? They're already living somewhere else, paying 2 rents, so they're anxious to sell. So that's a great opportunity to get it at a certain price, which I think we did. Super, check, we're under contract. Then we get the inspection back, and there was quite a bit. It was a sewer issue. Like sewer issues are big ticket items, radon issue. So we asked for what we needed. Some of this was maybe pie in the sky, but most of it was safety related. They came back at half what we asked, so we terminated. Well, they don't want to go back on the market. They've been on the market for 90 days, so next 24 hours, we got everything on our wish list done. That's the market driving it way more than anything else or any great negotiation I did.
yeah. If they have 4 offers on the property they're trying to sell, the negotiations and inspection, you lose a lot of that leverage. But
So-
if they haven't had one offer in 90 days, you got a lot more leverage.
So as buyer's agents, we do both, but as a buyer's agent, we've had some tough times.
So
Right? And then hard, when you're competing. Now, it's not a bad time to be representing a buyer.
and sometimes I've seen I've seen values of $20,000 to $30,000 for inspection objections and resolutions. So keep in mind, like you're getting $20,000 to $30,000 worth of work for, hey, the seller didn't know that this roof tile was cracked, or there's a roof leak or something like that. It's nothing on them. It's not like they maliciously were representing the house wrong. It's just they just didn't know. So yeah, it's something that needs to be taken care of. But there's a fair amount of dollar value out there. So HVAC systems, roofs, like you can get a lot of stuff in there. So that's why it's a separate part of the process. So that's why buying at a time where it's a balanced market really gives you a big advantage.
And that creates a way better home ownership experience. Going back to your nail through the copper pipe example. I mean,
Yes.
avoids headaches.
If there's ever a time where, I think now is probably the best time we've seen in a long time to, as a buyer, to be able to negotiate a lot of stuff right now. It's like, this is November 2025, just to put a timestamp on it. Right now we're seeing, rates are a little bit high. Home values are a little bit high, but sellers are suffering big time. So if you're even looking or even have a thought to buy right now, jump on that freaking wagon, because what we've got in store for you is we're going to negotiate really well on the price of the home. And then the inspection comes in, and we're probably going to get a lot of good stuff on the inspection, and you're going to be super, super happy that you bought now instead of once rates drop a little bit here in the near future. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind. When the market changes, we're in a seller's market right now, which is great for buyers. Excuse me. A buyer's market, which is great for buyers. If we shift over just a little bit in the rates, we're going to see that change quite a bit. Negotiating what you want isn't going to be as easy as it is now.
You lose your leverage.
So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, definitely. And just two quick things before we wrap up on appraisals. Usually, if a buyer has 20% down or more, a lot of times lenders are waiving that and not even doing an appraisal. It's just like a desktop drive-by appraisal. That's a change that's been in the last couple of years that we've seen. And then on the inspections, how we handle those as a team, typically we'll recommend getting a standard inspection and then with a professional inspector, and then getting a radon test and a sewer scope. And the sewer scope, the reason why you do that is it's $165 to do a sewer scope typically, and then it can save you $10,000, right? If there's a problem with the sewer line, it can be a big deal. And then on a radon test, it's your only chance to get the seller to pay for the radon, but there's like a 68% chance that the radon is going to test high in Colorado. Ever since the EPA, the Health Administration Office, lowered the acceptable rating from 8 to 4 picoliters per unit on radon, which is an invisible gas that comes up from the ground and is the second leading cause of lung cancer in a lot of people's eyes. Subject to opinion, but it has been proven to be harmful scientifically. And so that is something where it's your only chance, right, to ask for that to be tested at the inspection time frame. 24 or 48-hour test. It comes back 2 days later, and and then you can ask for it to be done by the seller. And that's about a $1,500 cost to $2,000, depending on if you have a crawl space or not.
To piggyback off that, I know I mentioned earlier, like you can get all these different inspections. 97% of the time, maybe even more, that type of inspection is all you're going to need.
Yeah. And the inspector will tell you if he recommends you do something else.
Right.
But like
I should have mentioned that before.
Going after all these different types of tests, like you'll spend thousands of dollars and it may not even be necessary or relevant. Right.
That's why I'm like, okay, lean on your realtors and then your inspector as well. Your inspector will say, you're probably okay, or yeah, I'd probably have someone else come and look at it. And typically that's going to be like a roofer or like maybe a structural engineer in the worst case. Typically you're not going to get a bunch of mold stuff, and you're not going to need asbestos and lead paint testers and all that. Those are like extreme cases. So let me make that clear. 99% of the time, I'm going to change it. 99% of the time, you're just going to need that general inspection.
And here's a sense of urgency, though. You get under contract, try and get that initial inspection done right
As
away.
soon as possible.
So you have enough runway should you need a structural engineer or something else too.
Because those amendments are just a headache.
Yep.
But if you have to, you can ask for an extension. If you communicate properly ahead of time, then usually that's granted if you need time for extra tests. So awesome. Well, we've covered it. You know all the ins and outs of appraisals, of inspections. Hopefully this has been helpful, especially if you're going through the process right now. But if you would like to go through the process and get into a home and you need to work with somebody who knows all of these ins and outs, this is all based off of our experience of real transactions that we've gone through. We actually didn't prepare for this one at all, and so this is completely
Some of the
just
inspections we've been through.
And how many home improvement projects
experience
we've
has
done.
taught us a lot on these things. So we're happy to guide you through this process as well, and would love to help you. So feel free to reach out if we can help you in any way, or if you know someone who we can help. And we appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.